Hi there. Well, I posted a video about a week or so ago looking at this lovely Forster 29 spark ignition engine from the 1940s, and we got it running in the test stand. Now, I mentioned in that video that this engine had twin points, which is quite unusual for old spark ignition engines. It was something that was offered as an optional extra on things like the Forster Brothers engines like this, the Olsen and Rice, and the Rocket Victor and May Rocket engines. Now, the idea behind having twin points was that you could alter the timing of the engine and hence alter the speed. So you could have the high speed points, or a set of points for high speed to give maximum RPM, and then you'd have another set of points which you could switch to, which would give you effectively kind of an idle. Now, they do that by advancing and retarding the ignition. So the high speed points would have quite an advanced ignition timing setting, whereas the low speed points would be kind of around top dead center. So you're bleeding away a lot of the power produced by the combustion in the chamber. So anyway, we're going to have a look at these high speed points in a little bit more detail in this video, and we're going to see how they work in principle anyway, and then we're going to get this in the test stand, we're going to wire it up, and we're going to see if they really work on a running engine. So let's take a look at the theory behind these twin points first. Okay, I've set this up so we can see at what point the points are opening and closing in relation to top dead center. Now, I've put the prop on so that when the tip of the prop here with the blue on gets to there, the engine is at top dead center. Now, we've got the two sets of points, or the terminals for the two sets of points. This one is for the high speed, and this one here is for the idle. Now, the high speed points at the moment is at the optimal running position, which is set 35 degrees before top dead center. Now, if we just connect that up, and when there's a circuit made, when the points close and charge the coil, the LED here lights up. So gets round to about there, and now the points are closed and the coil is charging, or it would be if there was one connected. And then when the light goes out, the current will go from the coil because the points open, and the coil will discharge and produce a spark there. And you can see that, if I've got that right, it's about 35 degrees before top dead center. And as I said, this is the optimal running position roughly for this engine. Now, I can adjust this so that those high speed points will open anything from 40 degrees before top dead center to 8 degrees after top dead center. But as I said, the optimal running speed for the highest RPM is there, just about 35 degrees before top dead center. Now, what is interesting is that if we now connect the low speed points, the idle points, we can see they close and we get the light, but then they open at there, what's that, about 5 degrees before top dead center. So for the idle setting, the ignition is just before top dead center. Whereas if we go back to the high speed points, we can see that is at 35. So when we switch over to the idle setting, we're actually we're retarding the ignition almost to top dead center. And what I found fascinating was that these idle points will only operate when the high speed points are set between 25 and 40 degrees before top dead center. If the high speed points are set out of that range, then these points, the idle points, are held open and they won't operate at all. So there we go, let's just take that round. Coil charges and coil discharges and produces the spark. And if we just put that back onto the idle, points close, coils charging, points open now, and the coil discharges and produces a spark. So just to recap, the high speed points are set at round about 35 degrees before top dead center to give us that maximum performance, that highest RPM. And then if we switch over to the low speed points, it's retarding the ignition to about 5 degrees before top dead center to produce that slower speed. And these slow speed or idle points will only operate when the high speed points are within a range of 25 to 40 degrees before top dead center. So in that kind of maximum speed range for these points. But the beauty of these points, the way they're set up, is that you're not switching from one set of points to another. It's a lot simpler than that. Essentially, the high speed points are always connected to the ignition circuit. But what you are doing is you are switching on the low speed points and switching off the low speed points. And the way it works is essentially that as the engine rotates, you get the high speed points closing, creating the continuity of the ignition circuit, and normally that would then have the contacts break, and that would cause a discharge in the coil which would produce your spark. But when you have the low speed points switched on, that continuity is maintained. So when the high speed points get to the point where they break, you still have a continuity of circuit until the engine rotates a little bit more, gets close to top dead center, and then the low speed points break and effectively give that discharge of the coil to create the spark in the spark plug. So it's a really nice design. So essentially those low speed points just maintain that continuity of closed points, the lag time a little bit longer until it comes up to top dead center. I love the way it's just so simple, the flick of a switch. And with modern day technology, we can get this coupled up with just a little a micro switch and a servo, and we can control it in flight if we've got a radio controlled plane. So anyway, I'm going to get this set up now with a switch, and we'll see how it runs in the test stand. But actually, before I do that, let me just show you this old advert which is advertising by Olsen and Rice a pair of twin points. And you can see here, and there's a little bit of text. If you've got a big screen, you can freeze it, you can read the text, and it just explains there how they work and how they're wired. So I keep referring to these as points. I don't know whether across in the US whether they call them breakers or whether they call them contact points. Maybe somebody can leave me a message and let me know what the correct term is across the pond. But in the UK I've always known them as points. So anyway, let's get to that test stand and get this thing fired up. Well, I've got this lovely old Forster 29 clamped in the test stand, and I'm dead interested today to see how this works with the twin points. I mean, we've seen the theory behind it, but we just don't know whether that was a bit of a gimmick of the time or whether it really worked. So I'm dead interested today to get this running and see how it performs. So anyway, we've got some fuel in the fuel tank, so let's get it fired up. Okay, so we've got the twin contacts now wired up, and we've got a switch to switch between the two. We'll have it off because I think that will now, if it's off, will run on the high-speed points. Once we've got it running, we're happy it's running as normal, then we'll switch it over to the low-speed points and see what happens. So let's just give this a little bit of a choke and get the battery connected up, and hopefully well, how cool is that? That is amazing. That is fantastic. I'm beaming because I didn't know how this was going to work, and I wasn't sure whether it was a little bit of a gimmick. I mean, looking at it and the angles and how it works makes sense. But I thought, is it going to work in practice? But that was beautiful. I mean, at the flick of a switch, it dropped the RPM by 2,500 from, what was it? It was about 4,000 and on the tick over, and it was about 6.5, getting up towards 7 on the high speed. Well, that is brilliant. So exciting to get that running. First time I've ever run twin points like that. And I'll tell you what, I have got just the model to get this in, and I can't wait to start flying this. It's going to be brilliant. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting and enjoyed it as much as I have, because this has blown me away today. It's just so exciting to see this running like that, just to flick the switch. Anyway, thanks very much for watching.